What is the burden of proof? Who carries it? And why does it matter? This is an idea that I sometimes see come up in disagreements and in the comments. So today I want to take a little bit of time to explain what it means and how it applies to conversations about God and religion. Let's start with a little history. The idea of the burden of proof comes from Roman law in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, so it's very old, and it's stated in the Latin phrase, e incumbet probatio qui dicit, non qui neget, which means the burden of proof lies on the one who asserts, not on the one who denies. So the original purpose of this idea was to ensure fairness and practicality in legal disputes. So when two parties were disagreeing in court, the person making the accusation or claim had to present evidence to support it. For example, if someone accused you of theft, then they would have to provide evidence that you stole something. The court wouldn't make you prove that you didn't steal anything unless the accuser first presented evidence. And when you think about it, this makes sense because proving a negative can be really difficult or sometimes impossible, right? Like, how would you prove that you hadn't stolen something if you hadn't stolen something? So over time, this idea spread beyond the courtroom into philosophy and science and history and everyday reasoning. And no matter the topic, the same principle applies. If someone claims that something is true about reality, then they need to provide reasons or evidence to support that claim. So how does this apply to conversations about religion? Well, consider two common claims that people make. The first is that God exists, or the second, that God does not exist. Both of these statements are making a claim about reality. One is a positive claim that God exists, and the other is a negative claim that God doesn't exist. Even though one is positive and one is negative, they are both claims about reality, and so both should provide reasons or evidence for why they think that that position is true. And I mentioned the positive and negative part because I think that sometimes we assume that only the person arguing that God exists or only the person making a positive claim carries the burden of proof. But in philosophy, it's not the same as in a courtroom. We don't base the burden of proof on whether a claim is positive or negative. We base it on whether or not someone is making a claim about reality in the first place. So both theists and atheists have a responsibility to provide reasons or evidence for the position that they hold. I think that this can become a little bit clearer when we compare those two claims to a third position someone might take, which is, someone might say, I don't know if God exists, or I'm not convinced either way. This position, which is often called agnosticism, is different. So unlike the theist or the atheist, the agnostic is not making a claim about reality, they're just withholding judgment. And because they're not making a claim about reality, then they do not carry the burden of proof. Understanding these more formal principles of rational discourse, like the burden of proof, can be helpful, but I think that they can also be misused. Like, sometimes people treat the burden of proof like a debate tactic, and then the goal becomes shifting the responsibility onto the other person so that the other person has to defend their view while, we sit back and critique it. And then the conversation just turns into something like, it's your job to prove that God exists, or it's your job to prove that God doesn't exist. And we get nowhere. I think in productive conversation, we're usually not trying to shift the burden of proof back and forth. Instead, we're both presenting our very best reasons and our very best evidence for the positions that we hold. And then that allows us to ask more important questions, like, given all of these reasons and evidence, which explanation best accounts for the reality? Or in the case of God, which explanation best accounts for the origin of the universe? Or which explanation best accounts for our sense that some things are objectively right or wrong? Or which explanation best accounts for the existence of our conscious, rational minds? Or which explanation best accounts for the historical evidence that we have surrounding Jesus's resurrection? Because ultimately, reality doesn't change depending on who wins the debate. What matters most is discovering what's actually true. Because if God exists, then that could have eternal implications for all of us. Of course, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Before watching this video, had you heard the idea of the burden of proof? And then when it comes to questions about God, do you think that both theists and atheists should carry the burden of proof, or should it fall on only one side? Please share your thoughts in the comments, and of course, if you have other thoughts or comments about Christianity or apologetics, you can add those too, and I'll do my best to respond there or in a future video. And if you would like to see more content like this, you can click the subscribe button just below the video, and I'll see you next week. Or if you want to go further right now, you can check out the next video, Is Belief in God Actually Rational?, which looks more closely at the kinds of reasons that people give for believing or not believing in God. And you can watch that by clicking the video on screen right now.